He was 25 years old, undefeated, untouchable, the most famous athlete on earth, and in a single moment they took everything from him. His title, his license, his passport, his livelihood. 3.5 years of his prime stolen, all because he said 8 words. I ain't got no quarrel with them, Viet Cong. The 28th of April 1967, Houston, Texas. Muhammad Ali stood in line with dozens of other young men at the armed forces examining an entrance station. The Vietnam War was raging. America was drafting its young men to fight in the jungles of Southeast Asia, and the most famous young man in the country had just received his notice. When the officer called out Cassius Marcellus Clay, the name, the government still insisted on using. Ali stood motionless. The officer called again. Cassius Clay stepped forward. Muhammad Ali did not move. He would not take the step that would induct him into the United States Army. He would not go to Vietnam. And he was willing to lose everything because of it. The response was immediate and devastating. Within hours of his refusal, the New York State Athletic Commission stripped Muhammad Ali of his boxing license. Within days, every other state followed. The World Boxing Association stripped him of his heavyweight championship. His passport was confiscated. He couldn't leave the country. He was indicted by a federal grand jury for draft evasion. If convicted, he faced 5 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. At 25 years old, at the absolute peak of his physical abilities, Muhammad Ali was banned from boxing. The sport he had dedicated his entire life to, gone. For 3.5 years, Muhammad Ali couldn't fight. He had no income from boxing, his savings dwindled, the endorsement deals dried up, the phone stopped ringing. He traveled the country speaking at colleges and universities. He talked about race, about religion, about the war. Students who had grown up watching him fight now watched him speak. But it wasn't the same. Every morning, he would wake up and train, shadow boxing in his living room, running through empty parks, keeping his body ready for a return that might never come. I'm still the champion, he would tell anyone who listened. They can take away my belt, they can take away my license, but they can't take away what I am. But with each passing month, the doubts grew stronger. What if he never fought again? What if his prime was being wasted in exile? What if, when he finally returned, he was no longer the fighter he used to be? Meanwhile, the boxing world moved on without him. A new generation of heavyweights emerged, younger, hungrier fighters who had studied Ali's style and learned from it. And one of them was about to become a problem. His name was Joe Frazier. He was everything Muhammad Ali was not. Quiet where Ali was loud, humble where Ali was boastful, a destroyer who walked forward relentlessly, throwing bombs with both hands. And while Ali was in exile, Joe Frazier had claimed the heavyweight championship of the world. Joe Frazier had grown up in poverty in South Carolina, one of 12 children. He had worked in a slaughterhouse, punching frozen meat to toughen his hands, a training method that would later inspire a famous movie scene. His fighting style was as brutal as his background. Where Ali danced and jabbed, Frazier marched forward like a tank. Where Ali kept opponents at range, Frazier smothered them in close, digging vicious hooks to the body and head. By 1970, Frazier had a perfect record, 26 wins, 0 losses, 23 knockouts. He had beaten every top contender. He had unified the championship that had been split after Ali's exile. And he was furious. Because no matter what he accomplished, no matter how many opponents he destroyed, the world still called Muhammad Ali the real champion. In 1970, everything changed. The Supreme Court began reviewing Ali's case. Public opinion on the Vietnam War was shifting. The boxing commissions were facing pressure to reinstate him. And then, finally, after 3.5 years of exile, Muhammad Ali was allowed to fight again. But he wasn't the same fighter who had left. He was older, slower, ring rusty, and the man waiting for him was a perfect, undefeated destroyer who had something to prove. The collision course was set. The fight of the century was coming, and only one man would walk away as champion. After 1,287 days away from the ring, Muhammad Ali made his return. The world expected a triumphant comeback. What they got was a warning sign that everyone chose to ignore. October 26, 1970. Atlanta, Georgia. Muhammad Ali's opponent was Jerry Quarry, a tough, respected heavyweight contender. A good fighter, but not a great one. The perfect tune-up fight for a returning champion. The arena was electric. Celebrities packed the ringside seats. The whole world was watching. And when Ali walked to the ring, the roar was deafening. He was back. Ali won. He stopped Quarry in 3 rounds, opening a terrible cut over his opponent's eye. The crowd went wild. The headlines declared Ali's triumphant return. The legend was back, they said, better than ever. But the people who understood boxing saw something different. They saw an Ali who was slower than before, an Ali whose legs didn't move quite as fast, an Ali who got hit with punches that the old Ali would have easily avoided. 3.5 years of exile had taken their toll. Ali was still great, but he wasn't the same. 6 weeks later, Ali fought again. Oscar Bonavena, a rugged, awkward Argentinian who had never been stopped. Ali was supposed to dominate. Instead, he struggled. For 14 brutal rounds, Bonavena pressed forward, making Ali work harder than he had in years. Ali's combinations were slower. His footwork was heavier. He looked human. Finally, in the 15th round, Ali knocked Bonavena down 3 times to end the fight. He had won. But it had taken everything he had, and Joe Frazier was watching while Ali struggled against Bonavena. Joe Frazier was destroying everyone in his path. Bob Foster, the light heavyweight champion who had knocked out 40 opponents, lasted 2 rounds against Frazier. Every contender who faced Frazier ended up the same way. Battered, beaten, often unconscious. Frazier's style was perfectly designed to beat Muhammad Ali. Ali needed space to dance, to move, to use his reach advantage. Frazier would smother him. Ali liked to fight at range, picking opponents apart with jabs. Frazier would walk through jabs like they were raindrops. Ali had never faced anyone who could pressure him like Frazier could. And now, after 3.5 years away, his legs, his greatest weapon, were no longer what they used to be. The math was terrifying. December 30, 1970. The announcement came: Muhammad Ali versus Joe Frazier. The 8th of March, 1971. Madison Square Garden, New York City. For the undisputed heavyweight championship of the world, both men undefeated, both men claiming to be the true champion, the fight was immediately dubbed the fight of the century. And for once, the hype wasn't exaggerated. Ali did what Ali always did. He talked. He called Frazier ugly. He called him dumb. He called him a gorilla. He said Frazier was an Uncle Tom, a black man who was accepted by white America while Ali was persecuted. The insults were vicious, personal, far beyond the usual trash talk. Frazier was wounded deeply. He had supported Ali during his exile. He had spoken up for Ali's right to fight again. He had even lent Ali money when times were hard. And now, Ali was publicly humiliating him. He can say whatever he wants, Frazier said quietly to reporters. On March 8th, I'm gonna shut his mouth. The fight was weeks away. Muhammad Ali trained harder than he had ever trained in his life. He knew what was at stake. He knew how dangerous Frazier was. But deep down, there was a fear he wouldn't admit to anyone. What if the exile had taken too much? What if the legs that used to dance were now too heavy to carry him? What if for the first time in his professional career, he lost? The answer would come on March 8th. And it would change Muhammad Ali forever. The 8th of March, 1971. Madison Square Garden. 20,000 people packed into the arena. 300 million watching worldwide. Frank Sinatra was shooting photographs for Life magazine because he couldn't get a regular seat. Burt Lancaster was doing color commentary. The demand for tickets was so high that closed-circuit screenings were held in theaters across the world. And somewhere in that chaos, 2 men were about to step into a ring and try to destroy each other. Joe Frazier arrived first. He walked to the ring in a green brocade robe, his face a mask of focused fury. He had waited years for this moment. Years of being called second best. Years of being dismissed as the other champion. Tonight, he would prove he was the only champion. Then Muhammad Ali appeared. Red velvet robe with white trim, dancing, smiling, waving to the crowd, playing to the cameras. But those who knew him best could see something behind the showmanship. tension. Even Muhammad Ali was nervous. This wasn't just a boxing match. It was a cultural war. Muhammad Ali represented rebellion. He was the anti-establishment hero, the man who had refused to fight in Vietnam, the man who had converted to Islam and changed his name, the man who spoke out against racism and injustice. Joe Frazier represented the working class, the blue-collar American who put his head down and worked hard, who didn't make political statements, who let his fists do his talking. White America, much of it anyway, wanted Frazier to win. Black America was divided. Some saw Ali as a hero. Others resented his attacks on Frazier, a black man who had risen from poverty through sheer determination. The whole world was watching, and everyone had an opinion. The two fighters couldn't have been more different. Ali, 6'3", 215 pounds, lightning fast hands, dancing feet, the greatest jab in boxing history, fought best at range. Frazier, 5'11", 205 pounds, shorter, stockier, relentless, the most devastating left hook in the sport, fought best on the inside. Styles make fights, and this clash of styles would produce violence. In the final seconds before the bell, both fighters stood in their corners. Frazier bounced on his toes, his eyes locked on Ali, his fists clenched. Ali shuffled his feet, threw phantom punches, his mouth moving in constant trash talk. The referee called them to the center of the ring for final instructions. They stared at each other. No smiles, no jokes, just hate. 3.5 years of build-up, months of insults, a lifetime of dreams. It all came down to this. The bell rang, 15 rounds of boxing, 45 minutes of war. And somewhere in those 45 minutes, one man's invincibility would be shattered. One man would fall. The question was, which one? The bell rang. And for the first 5 minutes, Muhammad Ali showed the world what they had been missing. He was back. He was brilliant. He was in control. And then Joe Frazier started walking forward. And everything changed. The first 2 rounds belonged to Ali. He came out dancing, moving, jabbing. The old Ali. The Ali who couldn't be touched. Jab, jab, right hand, circle away. Frazier pursued, but he couldn't catch him. Every time he got close, Ali was gone. Every time he threw a punch, it hit air. Ali talked constantly. "Is that all you got, Joe? You're too slow. You can't hit me." The crowd roared. The legend was back. But Frazier didn't care about the talking. He didn't care about the jabbing. He just kept coming. By the 3rd round, something subtle began to shift. Ali's legs, those magical legs that had carried him through 100 fights, were starting to tire. The 3.5-year layoff was showing. He wasn't recovering between combinations the way he used to. And Frazier sensed it. He started cutting off the ring, not chasing Ali, but anticipating where he would move, forcing him into corners, reducing his space. The jabs were still landing, but Frazier was walking through them and getting closer. In round 4, it happened. Frazier caught Ali on the ropes and threw that left hook, the most feared punch in boxing. It landed flush on Ali's jaw. Ali's legs buckled. For just a moment, a fraction of a second, his eyes went glassy. He grabbed Frazier and held on, buying time for his head to clear. The crowd gasped. Muhammad Ali had been hurt. For the first time anyone could remember, he had been visibly, undeniably hurt. The middle rounds were brutal. Frazier was relentless. He threw punch after punch, walking Ali down, trapping him against the ropes, digging hooks to the body and head. Ali tried to dance, but his legs wouldn't cooperate. He tried to clinch, but the referee kept breaking them apart. He tried to go back to basics, jab and move, but Frazier was too strong, too determined, too hungry. By round 7, Ali's face was beginning to swell. He was still fighting back, still landing punches, still showing flashes of brilliance. But he was losing. In his corner, after round 8, Ali's trainer, Angelo Dundee, was honest. "You're behind on points. You need to do something different." Ali nodded. He knew. For the next 2 rounds, he tried to make adjustments. He stood and traded with Frazier, trying to hurt him with power punches. But Frazier had a granite chin. Nothing Ali threw could stop him. And with every exchange, Frazier landed that hook. Once, twice, 3 times, each one taking a little more out of Ali. each one bringing Frazier closer to victory. After 10 rounds, the fight was clear. Joe Frazier was winning. Muhammad Ali, the man who had never lost, who had predicted victory over every opponent, who had told the world he was the greatest, was being beaten. 5 rounds remained. Ali needed a knockout. Frazier needed to survive. And in round 15, something would happen that the world would never forget. Round 15, the final round. Both men were exhausted, both men were damaged, both men were running on nothing but heart. And then Joe Frazier threw the punch that would define both of their legacies. The bell for round 15 rang like a funeral toll. Muhammad Ali rose from his stool slowly. His face was swollen, his legs were heavy. He had given everything he had for 14 rounds, and it hadn't been enough. But he was still Muhammad Ali. And Muhammad Ali did not quit. He moved to the center of the ring, raised his gloves, and prepared for 3 more minutes of war. 2 minutes into the round, Ali was on the ropes, trying to catch his breath. Frazier was in front of him, throwing punches in bunches. And then Frazier loaded up on his left hand. The hook came from somewhere near the floor. It traveled in a perfect arc, carrying all of Frazier's 205 pounds behind it. It landed on the right side of Ali's jaw. Time seemed to slow down. Muhammad Ali's head snapped to the side. His legs, those magical legs that had once floated like a butterfly, collapsed beneath him. His body twisted as he fell. And then, the greatest fighter in the world was on his back, staring at the ceiling of Madison Square Garden. The crowd erupted. Flashbulbs exploded like lightning. The impossible had happened. Muhammad Ali was down. But Muhammad Ali was not finished. Before the referee could even begin his count, Ali was moving. His right glove hit the canvas, then his left. He pushed himself up. At the count of 3, he was on one knee. At the count of 4, he was on his feet, swaying, unsteady, but upright. The referee looked into his eyes, checking if he could continue. Ali nodded. Fight on. The last minute of round 15 was pure survival. Ali clinched whenever he could. He moved on instinct, his conscious mind barely functioning. Frazier pursued, trying to finish him, but Ali wouldn't go down again. When the final bell rang, both men stood in the center of the ring, arms too heavy to raise. It was over. Everyone knew who had won. The judges' scorecards were red. Judge Artie Idala, 9-6 for Frazier. 11-4 for Frazier. Referee Arthur Mercante, 8-6-1 for Frazier. Unanimous decision. Joe Frazier was still the heavyweight champion of the world. And Muhammad Ali, for the first time in his professional career, had lost. Ali's jaw was so swollen that he would spend the next few hours in the hospital. His face was a mask of lumps and bruises. His body was battered. But somehow, in the post-fight press conference, he found the strength to speak. I didn't lose, he said. The reporters looked at each other. Was he in denial? Was he delusional? Joe Frazier is a great fighter, Ali continued. He beat me fair and square, but losing a fight doesn't make me a loser. I'll be back. And when I come back, I'll prove I'm still the greatest. The boxing world declared Muhammad Ali finished. He was 29 years old. He had lost his speed. He had lost his first professional fight. His best years, they said, were wasted in exile. Time to retire. Time to accept that the legend was over. But Muhammad Ali had other plans. The fall was not the end of his story. It was the beginning of the greatest comeback in sports history. The morning after the fight, Muhammad Ali looked in the mirror. His face was unrecognizable, swollen, bruised, distorted. The face of a loser. He stared at that reflection for a long time. And then he smiled. In the days following his first loss, Muhammad Ali did something unexpected. He didn't make excuses. He didn't blame the judges. He didn't claim he was robbed. He accepted it. I lost, he said simply. Joe Frazier was better than me that night. He deserved to win. For a man who had built his entire identity on being the greatest, on being unbeatable, on being invincible, this was a radical transformation. And it came from a place of genuine wisdom. Weeks after the fight, Ali sat down for an interview. The swelling had gone down, but the bruises remained. A reporter asked him how he was handling the loss. Ali's response would become one of his most famous quotes. Only a man who knows what it is like to be defeated can reach down to the bottom of his soul and come up with the extra ounce of power it takes to win when the match is even. He paused. I needed to lose, not because I wanted to, but because God had something to teach me, and I couldn't learn it any other way. What did losing teach Muhammad Ali? It taught him humility. For years, he had proclaimed himself the greatest. He had mocked opponents. He had reveled in his invincibility. The loss to Frazier reminded him that he was human. That every fighter, no matter how skilled, no matter how confident, can be beaten. That true greatness isn't about never falling. It's about how you rise. The Ali who emerged from the Frazier defeat was different. Not weaker, different. He trained harder than ever. He studied film of the fight, analyzing every mistake. He worked on his conditioning, knowing that his legs would never be what they were at 22. He developed new strategies. If he couldn't dance for 15 rounds, he would find other ways to win. He would use the ropes. He would pace himself. He would be smarter. And he would be more dangerous. Over the next 3 years, Muhammad Ali fought 10 times. He won all 10. He beat every top contender. He avenged his loss to Frazier in a grueling rematch. He worked his way back to a title shot. And in 1974, he faced George Foreman, the most destructive heavyweight since Sonny Liston for the championship. Everyone said he couldn't win. Everyone said he was too old. Everyone said Foreman would destroy him. They said the same thing they had said about the Liston fight. And once again, they were wrong. In Zaire, in the jungle, in the most famous fight in boxing history, Muhammad Ali reclaimed his title. The rumble in the jungle, the rope-a-dope, the knockout heard around the world, he was champion again. Years later, when people asked Ali about his legacy, he often returned to that first loss. Joe Frazier made me a better fighter, he said. More than that, he made me a better man. Before I lost, I thought I was invincible. After I lost, I knew I was human. And knowing you're human, knowing you can fail, that's what gives you the strength to succeed. Champions aren't people who never fall. Champions are people who get up one more time than they get knocked down. I got knocked down that night in Madison Square Garden, and I got up, and I kept getting up, and that's why I'm the greatest. The Frazier fight didn't diminish Muhammad Ali's legacy. It enhanced it. Because a hero who never struggles is not a hero. A legend who never falls is not a legend. What made Muhammad Ali the greatest wasn't his perfect record. It was his imperfect journey. The exile, the comeback, the first loss, the rise again. He showed the world that defeat is not the opposite of success. Defeat is the pathway to it. I hated every minute of training, but I said, don't quit. Suffer now and live the rest of your life as a champion. He who is not courageous enough to take risks will accomplish nothing in life. The fight is won or lost far away from witnesses, behind the lines, in the gym, and out there on the road, long before I dance under those lights. I am the greatest, not because I never lost, but because I never quit. Muhammad Ali fell on the 8th of March, 1971. And in falling, he discovered something that winning could never teach him. He discovered who he really was. Not the undefeated champion, not the invincible fighter, but the man who could look defeat in the face, accept it, learn from it, and rise again. That is the true definition of the greatest.